Florida State recruiting rundown and what's happening from spring practice.
You are Locked On Seminoles, your daily podcast on the Florida State Seminoles. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back into Locked On Seminoles. I'm your host, Brian Smith, longtime college football writer and recruiting analyst. Thank you for making Locked On Seminoles your first listen each and every day. Today's show is brought to you by our friends at TurboTax. Are you ready for stress-free taxes and the most money back guaranteed? Head over to TurboTax.com today and get matched with an expert. Let's do a little recruiting rundown as the visits just continue to pile up. There's been some good news on that front, just getting so many guys in, official visits, etc. And before I forget, I didn't even put this on my notes, a player that honestly, Florida State would be very happy to take, and quite honestly, about anybody else as well. When we pull up all the information here, I believe it is today that he is coming. Yes, that is true. Demarius Yates is coming to campus today or tomorrow for practice. Going to check it out. This is one of the top running backs in the country, and he is absolutely dynamic. I loved his film from his junior year. He's from the same high school, and he's good friends with Mario Nash Jr., who just signed with Florida State. He was awesome at Under Armour, New Orleans. He could play slot. He could play running back. He could play corner. He could play any skill spot. He is also on campus. I don't have any update beyond that. I just found that on X, but I wanted to throw that out there as well. So first off, as far as stuff that I have some info on, Landon Duckworth. Over the weekend, I heard that Auburn definitely was in play, and there's a chance he's going to visit next weekend. Florida State wants to get him on campus as well. Pay particular attention to where this young quarterback goes. From Jackson, Alabama, Jackson High School, he is one of, if not the top target for Gus Malzahn and the Florida State Seminoles. 6'3", 193 at the recent Elite 11, and absolutely unequivocally a guy that fits the offense to a T. Ole Miss is the leader, but he's not going there for that spring game unless something changes. Florida State has a shot. Auburn's getting in it. We'll see where that goes. And finally, there's the unknown. Like Georgia is a program that's been around his recruitment as well. I don't know how much that will play a factor if their official visit is real in terms of they're going to make a push to gain his commitment. I don't understand Kirby Smart's recruiting, but it still is Georgia. He's really unusual when it comes to quarterbacks. He really wants to be 1985 with his offense, which I think is probably his biggest concern as a head coach. Everything else I pretty much like, but their offense leaves much to be desired. So I'm curious if they'll go after Duckworth, and I'm curious if he wants to go there because their offense just doesn't normally run like a lot of other college offenses do. But if Florida State doesn't get him on campus this next weekend and he visits Auburn, look out. That's the in-state school. They have very powerful NIL. And I don't know what's going to happen with Travis Burgess. I know some people inside the program would love to get Burgess in the fold. He's at Grayson High School, program that Florida State fans that follow recruiting should know. It's just outside Atlanta. One of the best programs in the state of Georgia and the South. That's a national program. If he doesn't end up at Auburn and rather soon, this could get interesting because maybe Hugh Freeze and his staff switch over to Duckworth. Everybody thought that Travis Burgess was going to go to Auburn, but we'll see. That's a really interesting recruitment. Also, a player that I think is elite, one that doesn't get talked about a lot. He doesn't do a lot of interviews, etc. Tristan Gibbons, an edge rusher / believe it or not, wide receiver. I got to know him last year, went over to the high school at Carver in Columbus, Georgia. Great kid, pretty quiet, good student, just goes about his business. But, man, he is an elite pass rusher, and he's an elite player just overall. Florida State and Tennessee are among those schools to watch out for. A&M is another school, and there's some others that will continue to push. But right now, no Bama, no Auburn, no Georgia. That is very odd for a kid that's at Carver High School in Columbus. Why, I don't know, but he wants to leave the state of Georgia in the area, apparently. Most of the kids from the Carver area, Auburn's very much involved. Matter of fact, Parker Pritchett, his teammate just committed to Auburn, big offensive lineman. But we'll see. Tristan Gibbons could be a guy that flips back around and decides, you know what, I'll visit Georgia or some other school like that. Anything is possible. But, again, Right now, Florida State's got a shot. He was just on campus. He's a guy that really likes Florida State. There's an update on him on a couple of different sites. Make sure you look for those, check them out. And when I saw that he visited and Tennessee and Florida State were kind of towards the top, I was interested. The wild card, though, here is USC. They are destroying it on the recruiting trail. They are throwing around all kinds of NIL. They have actually 7 D linemen committed. I'm not kidding, 7. USC has the number 1 class right now. And I think, quite honestly, they're going to end up with that. They're going to sign over 30 kids. Would Givens be able to go from an area like Columbus, Georgia, which is more down home, pretty laid back, small to mid-sized city, to LA? I don't know. I think Florida State's the better fit, but the NIL money and everything that USC's got going on right now, maybe they could be involved too. My guess is this still comes down to Florida State or Tennessee. Moving on down the list, I just want to throw out, and I've mentioned this kid a couple more times than probably most other people around Florida State. It would be huge to get CJ Bruno, the kid out of Windermere High School, to come to Florida State. He is a kid that's going to run sub 4.4. He's a kid that is elite in terms of his ability to break on the ball. You can never have enough corners. I haven't heard anything in the last few days, but the last update was, hey, Florida State's getting him on campus. Everything's good. This is a kid you can't leave the state. He was committed to Nebraska before he blew up. Hats off to the Cornhuskers for getting him involved, but nothing new per se. But I'm waiting to hear more dates for his OVs. He's got a whole bunch of schools that just really came at him after Under Armour, Orlando, and I need to see the full list before I get excited one way or the other, whether Florida State's involved or not. I want to see it by the end of this month because I have a feeling it's going to switch a little bit. Then it might switch again in May as the May evaluation period really gets rolling. So we'll see with him, but I think he's one of the 5 to 10 most important players from inside the state of Florida for the Noles because he fits the program. He's an elite player at a position they recruit well, and you want to keep that DBU kind of mentality going. Like Florida State in the secondary right now is pretty darn good. You got a guy getting ready to get drafted in Thomas. They should be able to be in this till the end. LSU, Penn State, and a whole bunch of other schools trying to be involved as well. Derek Cooper, just to confirm, yeah, he has an OV to Florida State, but I'm always honest. I'm not buying it. I don't think Florida State has much of a shot here. I don't. I think this will be Florida State and Auburn coming in 3rd or 4th, one or the other in the 3rd spot. But 1 and 2 will be Miami and Georgia. I don't know what the order will be to finish. It kind of goes back and forth, but I think those 2 are definitively in the lead pack. Now, Cooper, in my opinion, is the best overall running back in the country. Plays at Chaminade Madonna, but he's close to Miami. Mom would like him very close to home. And he really likes Georgia. So either way, that's not good for the Noles. But if you get him on campus, you got a shot. We'll see if they can change him. Deuce Gerald's. I haven't heard anything new lately, but it depends on who you talk to. I guess I have what a little. Ohio State is what one person said. Another person I spoke with said Ole Miss. But Florida State is going to get him for an OV. This is a kid out of Collins Hill that is a tremendous pass rusher from the inside. He's 280, give or take. He has 55 offers. Florida State has a shot, but they got to hit a home run with the OVs. And I'm going to talk about the official visits and how important they are after I get done with this list. Caden Hall. This is a kid I had written off a couple of weeks ago, but it now sounds like Florida State is trending back up again. He might be the best safety in the state of Florida, which is always important because this state produces so many elite DBs in general, and he's from the greater Pensacola area. What do I say on this show? Almost every time I do a podcast, they must win I-10. UF is involved, Auburn's involved, Alabama, Clemson, you name it. They're all coming after him. But the latest is Clemson and Bama. It kind of caught his attention. But he's a Florida State fan. You cannot allow Clemson to get a kid out of your backyard that's a Florida State fan. Period. Bama would be a little more understandable because it's kind of the neutral school to pick if you can't decide on some of the others. Okay, but you still don't want Bama coming and taking a key guy. But if he goes to Clemson, I might do my own little podcast just on that. That cannot happen. Xavier Tiller. This is a kid Florida State has trended with on and off, but he was at Auburn this past weekend. I saw him there on campus. He's a kid that Florida State, I'm curious about the NIL with that one. How does that break down? How does that look? Auburn's, again, as I've said before, they've got a ton of NIL. Can Florida State get over the hump with that one? I don't know. We'll have to see. But that one I don't think is necessarily trending in the right direction if Auburn's throwing around the kind of money I think. I need to find out more details, but some of my Auburn friends think there's a really good chance he ends up on the Plains. When we come back, we're going to continue with the recruiting rundown and then get into some spring practice. That is next on the Locked On Seminoles. This message is from our sponsor, Intuit TurboTax. Taxes was waiting and wondering, worrying if you were going to get any money back, and then waiting, wondering, and worrying some more. Now Taxes is about matching TurboTax expert with your taxes as soon as today. An expert gives your taxes the undivided attention as they work on your return while you get real-time updates on their progress so you can focus on what you do each and every day. An expert who will find every deduction, every form that needs to be filed, and every investment, everything with 100% accuracy for you so you can get on with your day and get the most money back guaranteed. No waiting, wondering, or worrying. Now this is Taxes. Get an expert now at TurboTax.com. Only available with TurboTax and Y full service. Real-time updates only in iOS mobile app. See guaranteed details at TurboTax.com/guarantees. All right. Next up on the list, this is a player that I didn't know what would happen with him because I knew part of it would be attached to Duckworth. It's his teammate. Landon Duckworth, the quarterback that I talked about earlier in the podcast, plays at Jackson High School in Jackson, Alabama. Xavier Crowell, same thing. Elite player. He reclassed from 27 to 26, but he's a running back, traditional between the tackles with really good vision and got some breakaway speed. This is a really good football player. Right now, again, from people I've spoken with recently, Alabama, some think Auburn. We'll see. But either way, Florida State needs to get him on campus for the OB and just kind of see where it goes. But I don't like where FSU is at right now. I was hoping they'd be a little further up in the list at this point, but we'll see. And I'm probably going to mispronounce this. Hezzy Kent, Miami, Florida State, the kid out of Georgia, big tight end. Maybe he ends up being a tackle. He's in the 300-pound range, so I think he'll end up on the offensive line. Some people say he can play tight end, but I need to see that. I know that he has a lot of options. This is one of those recruitments that Bobby Bowden used to always win, the ones that were up in the air, and Florida State was among 4 or 5 schools. When it just came down to OVs, Florida State was the best program in the country. I don't know what it was, but Florida State won more of the toss-ups than any other school from the late 80s to the early 2000s. It was insane. This is the kind of kid they would have gotten. He's got offers from coast to coast. I mean, he's got offers up north like Notre Dame and all the way to Miami, etc. Big athlete, very agile. He's been on campus. Maybe Florida State can get this kid. I think he can be an All-American as an offensive tackle or guard. That's just my opinion. I don't think he should play tight end, but we'll see. Karan Maycock, committed to Florida State out of Miami Central. I haven't heard anything lately. I just want to bring this up again. He's a young man that has been committed for a while. Miami's been after him and, all these other schools, Syracuse, etc. Visited Notre Dame recently. They've got Jawan Sider on their staff now. He's strong ties to South Florida. Let's see what schools he takes at OV to. I haven't heard anything more recently. I just want to bring his name up because if Florida State loses kids like this, it hurts. They have to win South Florida even more than usual because they have so many excellent coaches with South Florida ties. Just for reference, Surtain and Evan Cooper, both your DB coaches, South Florida guys. So that's a great start because DB in South Florida is utterly ridiculous. Tim Harris Jr. is a guy. His dad, Ice Harris, was the main coach at Booker T. Washington for a while, and then he was the head coach for a season, and he knows that area well. Again, Florida State must win South Florida battles. Doesn't have to be a ton of players, but kids like this, especially after you get them committed at a critical spot because they need bodies at linebacker, you cannot lose Karan Maycock to Miami, Notre Dame, or whichever school it is. They need to win that battle. They got an easy path to playing time they can sell to him. Say, you can stay in state, but get out of Miami, kind of the happy medium. That's what Bowden used to be able to do all the time. Let's see if they can keep him in the fold. Now let's move on to my concerns and my hopeful kind of side of this. I'm hopeful on a few things, but because the media is not able to get in, there's not as many nuggets coming out. So in my contacts, I haven't heard as much from. I don't know how much my negative side is going to come out here, but I'm honest. I tell it like I see it. So I'm going to start with the hopeful stuff and just go by what everybody has said. And this, the first one I'm steadfast with because I just think it's a lock. Tony White's defense is a pain to deal with. That was proven at Nebraska because he doesn't have a ton of talent there, and they had a top 10 defense against the run the very first year he was in Lincoln with his staff. That's hard to do. I know the Big Ten West wasn't great, but like they were killing people up front, and they don't have elite talent. It was technique, it was run gap fits, it was hustle, it was tackling, it was all the fundamental stuff. A lot of the stuff, to quite honestly, Florida State didn't have last year. Being nice, but with a lot better athletes now and more depth, I think Florida State has a chance to finish somewhere around number 15 nationally. It's something I've talked about several times here on Locked On Seminoles because of all the things they have. Like nobody else has Daryl Jackson but Florida State. 6'6", 330 sitting on your center. That's not good. They're going to have to deal with him all year. He may not put up a lot of stats, but everybody's going to have to double team him. Everybody else is going to be able to benefit from it. So I'm very bullish on the scheme because I think it fits what Florida State has. It increases their depth. My only question is like, where's some of the linebackers play? How do you use a Blake Nicholson? I don't know. There's a lot of different players there that may not flourish the way I thought, but you got Stephon coming in from Nebraska to help teach the scheme, etc. We'll see a big jump for some of the guys. Like Nicholson supposedly didn't pick up the scheme super fast. You got all the rest of spring and you have all the rest of summer before you even get into fall camp. And they'll find a way to get him on the field in nickel or dime anyway, just as one example. I'm really bullish on the scheme giving teams problems, especially other teams' young quarterbacks. Any quarterback that Florida State plays this year that is a quote-unquote first-year starter, I think those guys are going to see ghosts. I think Florida State is going to have the biggest increase from last year. And this isn't a high hurdle to go over in terms of turnovers created in 2024 to 25. The range will be the widest of any major college football program. I think Florida State will cause a bunch of interceptions. Part of that's the length, getting some deflections up front, but the scheme is going to be wide. Number two, everything that we've heard is White's getting into guys. They're going after it, creating more continuity. There's more accountability. They're going to be physical because that's what they were at Nebraska, and all of it's going to function better together. So more physicality, more functionality. I'm very confident on that. And all the reports, whether it's 24/7 Knowles, War Chant, or anybody else, anybody that's done a report, you hear more or less the same thing from anybody that was at practice, anybody I've talked to, anything else. It's about the ability to be physical and being accountable. Florida State, Lord only knows, didn't have enough guys that were accountable from play to play last year. That seems to be going up. I'm not saying this defense is going to be a top 3 national DE or anything next year, but I think they're going to be fun to watch because they're going to hustle. They're going to get turnovers like a guy running from behind after a running back gets into the second level and popping the ball loose. Those hustle plays that Florida State is famous for, I think those are going to be back. That is something I'm greatly, greatly happy to say out loud and certainly hopeful that they come to fruition. What I saw last year was too many loafs and too many guys that didn't care enough. I think that's going to go away. And number 3, this is something, again, that kind of goes into the scheme factor. When you have the luck that Coach White and his staff that came over on defense did by, I don't want to just say inheriting, but having the option to keep the kids there, because remember, this is the portal area. It's not just inheriting anymore. They had the opportunity to keep them. They did keep them. The depth that they have for the way they run, the 3-3-5, and they'll be in some 4-man looks too, is going to be a really big difference. And I think on offense, they're a little deeper at most spots, O-line being the one that I'm concerned about. Receivers definitely deeper. Tight end adding Lofton is a good thing. I think he'll play some this year as a freshman. Don't sleep on Lofton playing this year, the young man out of the Omaha, Nebraska area. And finally, with that depth, you're going to have, even if you have a run on a position, again, O-line's the one spot. They can't have injuries there. But any other spot, they can have some injuries and kind of survive. Last year, linebacker, they couldn't have it, and it did. O-line, it did. Quarterback gets hurt. Receivers in and out of the lineup. It was a mash unit. They didn't have enough depth. They're going to be able to survive more close games because they have more depth this season, and that's really, really important. When we come back, I'm going to talk about the concerns that I have still based on spring practice nuggets and just really overall my thoughts about Florida State right now. Part of that is going to be nothing shocking to y'all because I'm concerned about how much they've closed practice, but I'll go into detail on the other side here on Locked On Seminoles. Ever check your bank account and wonder, where did all my money go? Between dining out, online shopping, and entertainment, it's easy to lose track. That's where Moderate Money comes into play, your personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Moderate Money isn't just a budgeting app, it's a complete financial command center. You can track your accounts, investments, and spending in one place, so you stop just managing your money and start building wealth. For an insight on this, look at it this way. I, like many of you, probably spend too much on things like Ubers, convenience stores, and just spending peddling money on things that add up. One transaction, not a big deal, but when you do it over and over and don't pay attention, that's money that you could be saving and helping you for the future. And you can also, with Moderate Money in their app, keep more than one account in one spot so you can manage with your partner, set personal goals, and again, save your money for the future and use it more wisely. Take control of your finances with Moderate Money. Use code LOCKEDONCollege at moderatemoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's moderatemoney.com, code LOCKEDONCollege for half off your first year. Florida State has a few concerns, and I just want to start with the number one thing because it's the most important attitude adjustment that they're going to need, and that's at the quarterback spot. That's good news. Castellanos is going to be there, but your team, as any game goes, will go with its quarterback's accuracy. There are concerns that Castellanos won't be accurate enough. I don't know. I'm not there at practice, and even if I was, it's still practice. I need to see him make throws while he's getting ready to get hit. We're only going to see that in one scenario. That's actual games. So what I'm about to say is based on just knowing him and what little, and it is little, that came out of the practice the media was at this past weekend and what few nuggets are out there. He's not always going to be a consistent quarterback, especially in the short game. I've never seen him that way consistently. For whatever reason, he's better on throws down the field where he can just let it rip. This is the kind of guy that if he's on the pitcher's mound, his fastball would be his number one pitch. He has a gun. But in Malzahn's offense, it is often predicated the most important plays are screens. The slot receiver will lead the team in receptions pretty much every year. It's almost a lock because of how they run the screen game. And with Squirrel White and probably just a bevy of guys that can catch Jalen Lucas, don't forget about him. But they can rotate guys in and out of there. Deuce Robinson, they'll probably move into the slot occasionally. Whatever it may be, it has to be accurate for those plays to blossom. Everybody knows what Gus wants to run. He's done it for over a decade. But it's been so proficient that they've been able to get away with it. He wants to run the ball, throw screens, and do misdirections, and throw bombs. It's not a newsflash. But his execution in that offense and keeping teams off balance with being a really good play caller, it doesn't matter. The key still is accuracy, though. Because if you miss on a screen, what should be at least a 5-yard gain to get in 2nd and 5, and you throw a dirt ball, that doesn't work. I don't get to see all the practices, like I said, but I do not expect Thomas Castellanos to suddenly be Mr. Accuracy. He's going to have to adjust to that, and it's very important this summer that he gains more of a balance with, got to get Landon Thomas the ball too, but you've got to get Squirrel the ball in stride, Jalen Lucas the ball in stride, Deuce Robinson the ball in stride on those short throws. That's something that I don't think that is his strength, but that's the one part of Gus Malzahn's offense that gives me pause about it. We'll see if that comes to fruition because in games where he's on that short stuff, Florida State's offense can score on anybody. They can drop 30 on Notre Dame, Ohio State, Alabama, Texas, anybody. Games that he doesn't throw that well, they could be in the teens. It is that important for that offense to be good with the short passes to make teams come up and change how they want to throw deep shots and keep them off balance, keep them on a string. Next up, my concern, I've said this 100 times, and this is the one that is just annoying. Maybe it's because I'm so impatient, but does anybody really believe there is a definitive candidate right now that is the leading guy to be the number 2 receiver besides Deuce Robinson? I've said it 100 times. I'm going to continue to say it. Until I hear that there is a number 2, my fear is this season, especially on 3rd and 5, 3rd and mediums, we're going to take Deuce away. We're going to roll coverage to him. You're going to have to beat us with somebody else. I would. Most defense coordinators would. Florida State struggled with the same problem last year. They didn't even have a number 2 last year because they had so many drops. But Deuce Robinson's a really good player. Landon Thomas might be your number 1 in some ways, and he's going to be going against linebackers and safeties a lot. I keep saying his name for a reason, by the way. Get Landon Thomas the football. But if they don't have a true number 2 at receiver, maybe somebody like Boggs emerges and he ends up being the guy. Who knows? But if they don't have a number 2, it's going to make it much, much harder on Castellanos in the offense. Got to find a way to make teams guess on where Florida State wants to go with the ball, regardless of who's in the personnel package or what the personnel package is in general. I don't care if they're in 4 wide receivers, they're in 2 tight ends. I don't care. They've got to be able to do it. Get that second guy out there and teams fear it. If it's Squirrel White, that's fine. Again, he'll probably lead the team in receptions, but it can't just be because of screens. Can he be a viable threat running different routes underneath that really cause havoc to help Deuce Robinson get open? We'll see. And finally, this is the 3rd one. There have been a ton of injuries this spring, and that's part of the game. I get that. But Florida State cannot have much more of that. And over the summer, they need a little luck too. Even just going through drills, the guys run 7-on-7 themselves and stuff. There's not as much chemistry because you got new offensive coordinator, new defensive coordinator, transfer quarterback, a bunch of players coming off injury from last year, an O-line that has 4 transfers. They need insane luck between now and the end of fall camp to be ready for that Alabama game. That's something you can only control so much, but Florida State did not have the luck they needed this spring. That I can assure you. That is a big concern for me because timing and rhythm, especially on offense, is such a viable part of winning and losing. If you do not have offensive linemen that are ready to play together, that's a problem. They've been pretty fortunate there, but they don't have many backups. So O-line's probably the biggest concern again this next season. They can't lose any of those guys. And then on top of it, like the safety position's been banged up. Linebacker hasn't been banged up a ton, but enough guys have been in and out of the lineup in general through spring where I just worry about the systems being picked up and what they're able to do. Because you're not playing some directional school game 1. You're playing the University of Alabama. So every single rep counts. These guys got to be really careful with their bodies, what they eat, how they sleep, what they're drinking. Everything for every single ounce that goes in their body is vital between now and the beginning of that first game against Bama. So we'll see how that goes, but we'll probably get a few nuggets from this next weekend and get some kind of report somewhere on Monday or Tuesday next week after some of the information gets out. But obviously Florida State's trying to hide everything, and I don't blame them, from the spring game or whatever it is, the showcase, because they don't want anybody to see the film and try to steal their players. That's what's going on in college football. I spoke to a coach at length about it here recently at another school, and it's flat out. It wasn't even a doubt. He said, yes, that's what it is. That's why you're seeing these spring games get canceled. So we'll see what Florida State comes up with after spring, and we'll kind of go from there. But right now, I'm in between on whether my original 7-5 prediction is going to stick. But we'll talk about that again more next week. Thank you once again for making Locked On Seminoles your first listen each and every day. I truly appreciate you stopping in to get all your latest Noles information. Everybody have a good one, and I'll see you again soon.